Welcome to our deep dive. We're going to be looking at the messages to the 7 churches in Revelation chapter 2. It's like getting a personal letter from Jesus, right? With encouragement, warnings, and a call to faithfulness.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that these letters, they weren't just for those specific churches back then. They still apply to us today, to individuals and the whole church. Today, we're going to unpack the messages to the first 4 churches: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, and Thyatira.
Okay, so Ephesus, the first church mentioned, they're praised for all their hard work and perseverance, and they even got their doctrine right. Sounds like they were a model church, so what's the problem?
Well, that's exactly the point. Ephesus, they had the look of godliness, but they'd lost the heart of it. You know what I mean? They were busy doing all the right things, but their love for Christ had grown cold. It's like a chilling reminder that we can be super active in ministry and still be distant from Jesus.
So it's not enough to just go through the motions. We have to be truly connected to Christ.
Exactly. The message to Ephesus, it calls us to examine our hearts. Are we serving because we feel like we have to, or are we serving out of love for Jesus? It's a call to rekindle that first love for him, that passion that should drive everything we do.
That makes me think about Smyrna, the next church. They were going through some really intense persecution, but they didn't get any rebuke from Jesus.
Yeah, Smyrna reminds us that suffering is often just part of being a Christian. Their faith was tested like crazy, but they didn't waver. And I don't think this means we should go looking for hardship, but we have to realize that standing up for Christ can have a cost.
I mean, that crown of life that's mentioned in Revelation, the reward for being faithful, that must feel so real to the believers in Smyrna. But, for those of us who aren't facing persecution, how do we apply this today?
It's about finding that unwavering spirit in the face of any trial, no matter what it is. Think about how a diamond is formed. It takes so much pressure to create something so beautiful. Our faith, it can be refined through pressure too, whether that's opposition for our beliefs or just the challenges we face every day.
Okay, on to Pergamum. And this one seems a little tricky. They're praised for their faithfulness, but also criticized for being tolerant to false teachings. I mean, isn't it a good thing to be tolerant?
Yeah, but there's a difference between being gracious and compromising on truth. Pergamum, they were trying to blend in with the culture around them, even if it meant watering down their beliefs. And that highlights a danger for all of us, Trying to be all things to all people can lead us away from our faith.
Like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly. The message of Pergamum, it challenges us to think about. What are the ways we might be compromising without even realizing it? What things are influencing our beliefs and our actions? It's a call to stand strong on the truth, even when it's not popular.
So how do we even know what the truth is? I mean, it seems like everyone has their own version of the truth these days.
That's where knowing Scripture and having a strong understanding of theology really comes in. But also, being in community with other believers is so important. Learning from those who are more mature in their faith and always seeking God's guidance.
That makes sense. All right, let's talk about Thyatira, a church that was known for its love and good works. But they were rebuked for putting up with a false prophetess, Jezebel. What's going on there?
So Thyatira represents a church that had gotten complacent, right? They were comfortable and successful on the outside, but something dangerous had taken root. This shows us how important it is to deal with sin, even within the church. Because if you ignore it, it's like a cancer. It can just spread and corrupt everything.
So we can't just sweep things under the rug and hope they go away.
Exactly. The message to Thyatira, it challenges us to be vigilant, to be able to tell the difference between truth and lies, and to be brave enough to confront sin in our communities.
But how do we do that without being judgmental or acting like we're better than everyone else? How do we speak the truth, but also show grace?
Yeah, that's the tricky part, isn't it? We need to remember that the goal is to restore people, not to condemn them. It's about speaking the truth, but doing it with love. Trying to understand where they're coming from and helping them find healing and freedom from sin.
It's kind of like having a tough conversation with a friend. You care about them, so you don't avoid the hard stuff. But you approach it with compassion because you want to see them do well.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's about being willing to challenge each other, but in a way that builds each other up, not tears each other down.
Okay, so we've talked about these messages to the churches. And what I'm hearing is a call to really look at our hearts. To be strong even when things are tough. To hold on to the truth. And to deal with sin with love and grace. But how do we actually live this out?
That's the big question, right? Well, based on what we've learned from these 4 churches, let's try to come up with some practical steps for renewal and restoration.
Okay, I'm ready. Lay some wisdom on me.
All right, first, remember Ephesus. They let their love for Christ fade. We need to make sure we're nurturing our relationship with Jesus. It's not enough to just go to church on Sunday. We need to be talking to him every day through prayer, worshiping him, and studying his word.
So, like, making time for those things, even when we're super busy.
Exactly. Making that connection with Jesus a priority.
Okay, thinking back to Smyrna. They were facing persecution, but they had unwavering faith. That's tough. How do we apply that when we're not, in life or death situations?
It's about recognizing that trials come in different ways. Maybe it's sticking up for your beliefs when people disagree with you, or dealing with a hard relationship, or going through a personal crisis. Whatever it is, the message from Smyrna reminds us to rely on God for strength. He's always there for us, even in the tough times.
And yeah, that image of the diamond, how it's formed under pressure, it shows that sometimes the hardest times are the ones that make us stronger.
I love that. It's about seeing those trials as opportunities to grow, to become more refined, to rely on God even more.
Okay, now to Pergamum. They were compromising their faith. How do we stay true to what we believe when everyone's telling us to just go along with the crowd?
I think it starts with really understanding what you believe and why. Dive deep into Scripture, study church history, talk with other people about it. The more you understand your faith, the better equipped you'll be to stand firm when people challenge you.
So it's not just about following the rules. It's about having a personal understanding of what we believe.
Yes. And remember, standing firm doesn't mean being stubborn or judging other people. It means holding on to the truth while also showing grace to those who see things differently.
Okay, lastly, Thyatira. They had to deal with sin in their church. That feels so relevant today with all the division and confusion. How do we even start to approach that?
Well, it starts with humility, remembering that we're all sinners and we all need God's grace. It's not about blaming other people or making them feel bad. It's about coming to each other with compassion and a desire to see things made right.
So leading with love, not judgment.
Exactly. And remember, addressing sin doesn't always mean you have to directly confront someone. It could mean praying for them or setting boundaries or simply living out your faith in a real and authentic way around them.
So just being an example.
That's it. Ultimately, it comes down to trusting that God's working in all of us and that he can use our efforts, even when we're imperfect, to bring about healing and change.
Okay, so to recap what we've learned from these churches, rekindle your love for Christ. Stand strong when things get tough, hold on to truth, and deal with sin with grace and courage.
That's it. It's a call to faithfulness, to live out the gospel in a way that impacts not just ourselves, but also the world around us.
These messages, even though they were written so long ago, they're speaking directly to us today. They're challenging us to really look at our own hearts and renew our commitment to Christ, and to step into a life that has more purpose and impact.
And what's truly amazing is that even when those early churches messed up, they were given a way back. That same path is open to us today.
That's really good to know, that even when we make mistakes, God's grace is still there. He wants to bring us back, not just give up on us.
Absolutely. These messages are about hope, not condemnation. They're like a wake-up call, an invitation to come back to that place where we have a burning love for Jesus and where we're unwavering in our faith and committed to the truth.
So as we wrap up our look at Revelation chapter 2, what stands out to you the most? What do you hope people will remember from these messages?
For me, it's that reminder that Jesus is so involved with his church. He sees our struggles, and he celebrates our victories, and he calls us to be more faithful. He's not just watching from a distance. He's right there with us, guiding us, correcting us, and loving us no matter what.
Wow, that's a really powerful image. He's not just observing. He's totally invested in seeing us grow.
Exactly. And that growth isn't just about being good on our own. It's about being a light to others, being a force for good, and a community that shows Christ's love and grace.
So for you listening, what does all this mean for you? As you think about these messages, what part speaks to you the most? Where do you feel like Jesus is calling you to step up and be more faithful?
Maybe it's about rekindling that first love for Jesus, getting that fire back. Or maybe it's about standing strong when you're facing something difficult and trusting his promises. Or maybe it's looking at your life and seeing if there are any places where you're compromising your faith. Or maybe it's even taking a step to address sin in your community and working towards healing.
This deep dive has really challenged me. It's made me think about my own heart and where I've maybe gotten too comfortable or let my love for Jesus fade. I feel inspired to be more faithful, to be bolder in sharing my faith in my daily life.
Yeah, that's what's so great about these messages. They show us our weaknesses, but they also point us towards renewal and restoration.
It's a journey, not a destination, right? We're all still growing, but we have a God who's committed to making us more like his Son.
I love that. And don't forget, you're not alone in this journey. We're all part of a community, a group of believers who are there to support and encourage each other.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Revelation chapter 2. We hope these messages have challenged you and inspired you to be more faithful, and that you'll experience all the blessings God has for you.